We thank you for the honor of joining us at the Academy of Cultural Diplomacy here in Berlin. And we would like to ask you a series of questions in order to hear your thoughts and opinions on some issues. For the first question, as I heard your speech here, I want to ask you about the future of leaders. I want to ask you, as a senior politician, what is your message for the future generation of young leaders?
Okay. So really thank you for inviting me for this interview as well. It's always a pleasure to be with young people and with young people that are interested in our societies and the change in our societies. Societies are organic, they don't stop, but change is always and in the right way is always very welcome. Yes, with regards to future leaders, I have mentioned in my speech that we need to invest and empower our children and young people, to empower them with the right skills, empower them to embrace ethical values of respect, of dialogue, of human rights. And if we invest in children and young people in this manner, we can ensure that we will have in the future resilient leaders that have respectful ways of doing politics, of bringing together as much as possible nations that can speak with one another, that can celebrate diversity, that can really see something very meaningful in our diverse ways of our cultures, faiths, traditions. Because to be honest, we are missing the wood for the trees, as I see it. We're such a beautiful human family, but we are not acknowledging the beauty of being different. We are, unfortunately, instead of celebrating our diversity, we are like looking at each other, and instead of seeing something which we can learn, we can grow together, is we think of the other. But who is the other? This is one human family. We have the same needs. We have the same aspirations. So I do believe that this is fundamental. We need education systems that empower our children, not just for academic and vocational training and qualifications, but even more so in ethical values of understanding, of respect, of embracing diversity, of manifesting this beautiful one human family that we should be, living in.
Thank you so much. And Jack, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I would like to also bring you to the realities of the wars between Ukraine and Russia. And I know children have been adversely affected by the wars. So now I want to focus on the EU. What is the EU doing? And if so, what are the major challenges that the EU is going through right now?
Yes. So in wars and conflicts, there's no one that can boast that wins or be victorious. Yeah. It's always a lose-lose situation. And it is definitely a devastating situation for the Ukrainian people. I would say even for many bystanders, but obviously the brunt of direct effect of the war is on the Ukrainian people and on children. Half of the children, Ukrainian children, have fled Ukraine and are in the neighboring European countries. the effects of war. It's not just the energy crisis, which has put or created a situation of huge inflation, disruption of supply chains, and we can add on that to the list. But the effects of war will continue for some decades to come. And I say this even if we immediately give all the necessary support to the children. Children, Ukrainian children, and I would say even bystanders need the support to overcome the trauma of war, the effects of war. I do not want to forget also, Ukrainians have a lot of relatives in Russia.
Yes, true.
And there are Russians who have relatives
Yes.
in Ukraine. So there is a situation there, a very humane, emotional situation there, which many a time, in these hard times of analyzing a war and a conflict, we tend to forget this human element, humanitarian element. But we need to definitely work at supporting our children and young people from the effects of war. We will need to support them to get out of the trauma of all the effects of war. And I speak of children and young people because definitely these will be the children and young people that will be the leaders of their communities and their country tomorrow. And if we leave them on their own, the trauma, the hurt, the emotions, and will work inside, and instead of overcoming the challenges to find ways of making peace, of building peace again, it will be even harder. On the other hand, I also, when we speak of war and the Ukrainian war, I am a woman of the Mediterranean.
Yes.
We have seen in the Mediterranean for decades on end, children and young people unaccompanied, fleeing conflicts and wars and persecution, with all the trauma on their faces and their lives. And unfortunately, I do feel that even there we need to do much more. We cannot turn our backs on people fleeing wars just because the war is not at our doorstep. We cannot leave boatloads of people risking their lives on high seas or pushing them to extreme environments. So yes, we now have the unfortunate experience of a war firsthand on the European continent, a war which we've never thought we will see again. But there are a lot of other wars going on and conflicts around us in other parts of the world, and that also must concern us. We cannot, if I just mentioned the surroundings of my immediate surroundings as a woman from the Mediterranean, how can I forget the Palestinians?
Yes.
How can I forget the Libyan people? You know, I mean, these wars have now been going on and on and on, raging on. And unfortunately, we tend to forget. We just remember the most recent and maybe the nearest to our doorstep, one could say. But definitely war, whatever it is, conflict, whatever it is, leave a devastating trail of effects. Not just the issue of like the energy crisis, which is compounding on many families, communities, societies now, because the increase in prices is affecting the most vulnerable, and undoubtedly because of heating, and undoubtedly children, young people, who that will impact their lives.
Yeah, and I want to mention the sentence you quoted in your speech that democracy is not the power of majority, but for the protection of minorities. And that's I
Yes.
think a sentence that says
Profound.
everything.
Yeah.
That's Camus. That's
Yeah,
a quote
yeah.
from Camus. Yes, it is as I did not explain it in depth, but
Yeah.
during my speech I was coming to that. Definitely, democracy does not mean that we safeguard the rights, the human rights of the majority at the expense of a minority. But we need to ensure that we are safeguarding human rights for each and every one of us, whoever we are, from wherever we come from. So this is how I interpret briefly what Camus
Yeah.
very wisely
And in this case, the minority
Yes.
you mentioned are the children.
Yeah.
They
Yes.
fall
Yeah.
under the minority.
Yeah, and they are the most vulnerable.
Yes.
Children are the most vulnerable. So that's, besides that, children are now, the investment in children has to be done now.
Yes.
Because tomorrow they will be our
older
leaders.
generation,
So
yes.
what we're doing now, if we ignore, we're ignoring what the sort of leadership
That's
we
true.
want tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and it was an honor that you could be with
Thank
us
you.
and share your views, and we really appreciate your time.
I really must thank you both, and
Thank
I
you.
feel
It was
privileged
an honor. Thank you.
to
Thank
be between two beautiful young people.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.